What is happening, wrestling fans? Welcome to the live Money in the Bank recap edition of the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Chris Belcher. If you are watching us on YouTube right now, make sure that you interact with us. Send us a comment. That's what this show is all about. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure you do the same. Share it with all your friends. Make sure that they get in on the conversation as well. We're talking all things WWE Money in the Bank. And if you are listening on Sportinarium Radio, we appreciate you doing that as well. Make sure you give us a follow at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where we drop episodes every Monday and every Thursday. Once again, I'm your phenomenal host, Mr. Podcasting, Chris Belcher, and joining me tonight, making his first appearance on the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast, it is Mr. Adam Williamson. Adam, what's going on, man? How's it going?
You know, it's going pretty good after that show, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's, man, what a show it was. It was so good. Well, it's what we're here to talk about. So, again, shoot your comments in. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to hop on. That way we can get into the conversation. Before we get started, though, every time that we have a new guest on the podcast, we like to introduce everybody to them. Make sure that they know that we're not just bringing some people on here just to talk BS. I wouldn't bring somebody on the podcast if they didn't know what they were talking about. So, Adam, give everybody just a brief history of yourself as a wrestling fan, just kind of who your favorites are and just what got you started into wrestling and that kind of thing.
So I've been watching wrestling about as long as I can remember. My actual first memory is WrestleMania 3.
Oh, okay.
That's the first thing I can remember.
Hold your mic up just a little bit. There you go.
On a big panel TV. You know, wrestling has always been one of my biggest hobbies. I was one of those nerds back in the 90s who tape traded for Japanese wrestling tapes.
Oh, yeah, you're one of those guys.
Yeah, FMW, Super Juniors, stuff like that. You know, today I watch it all.
Right.
I'm a big AEW fan, big WWE fan. Love guys like AJ Styles still a huge fan of guys like Big E, who had a great night tonight.
Oh, yeah, Big E had a huge night tonight. That's great.
Course, just lifetime Chris Jericho fan.
Oh, I mean, who is not a lifetime Chris Jericho fan, right? How could you, honestly, our age, how could you be a wrestling fan and not be a fan of Chris Jericho?
I mean, it's impossible. We grew up with the guy.
I mean, you watched him evolve, especially you doing tape trading stuff with Japanese stuff. You see him evolve from the Japanese to the Mexican stuff to Smoky Mountain to WCW and all points in between. I mean, then he hits WWE and now AEW and WWE and back and forth. It's just the guy's done it all. And this is not a podcast about Chris Jericho, but I mean,
it's hard not to talk about a guy.
It really is.
He's going to be in the conversation for one of the greatest of all time.
Absolutely. He has to be. That being said, though, again, this is not an AEW podcast. This is not a Chris Jericho podcast. This is WWE Money in the Bank recap. And, man, we have to start at the last thing we saw when the event went off the air. Not only did Roman Reigns and Edge put on an incredible match, we see the return of John Cena. Oh, my gosh.
How about that pop for Cena?
My goodness. A pop for John Cena like I haven't heard in like 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you know, I think we all went through the phase of it's really fun to say John Cena sucks.
Oh, yeah.
After, you know, a year, almost 2 years now, it was so great to see the guy come back, just to hear those horns one more time.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in the house at WrestleMania 35 when he came back and he did the Thugonomics thing with Elias, and that was really cool. He got a cool pop there. But tonight, just like you said, the horns and his traditional entrance music, and here he comes to confront Roman Reigns. I mean, yeah, you miss the guy for sure.
You really do. And he brings so much energy
with
him. He was really a blast from like a pre-pandemic past.
Right.
And it was great to see, especially after the last half hour of really grueling, great wrestling.
Right. And let's talk about that because even though John Cena came back and even though Seth Rollins jumped in there and interfered in the match, the Usos and the Mysterios, all kinds of shenanigans going on in the main event. But let's not look over the fact that Edge and Roman really did have a great match. It started out slow, as it should, but it picked up. They told a great story. It was a really good match.
Sure. I mean, there were some of the usual "you can't wrestle" chants coming towards the end, but man, over the last 6 years, you cannot argue that Reigns has not evolved into one of the best main event wrestlers.
Yep, no doubt.
It's just Edge did a great job, especially for a guy who's been gone for so long. But man, Reigns carried that match into something beautiful.
He really did, and it just goes to show you all the guys in the back who you've heard interviews. Chris Jericho, we mentioned him earlier. I can think of him specifically talking about how good Roman Reigns is and how not many people give him the credit for it, but he's really that good. And again, he proved it tonight. He's proved it throughout the pandemic era, which we're going to talk about this coming Thursday on the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. So make sure that you tune in for a special end of the pandemic era episode. But Roman has really, I mean, it's been not nearly as good, obviously, without fans in the building,
Right.
but it has given Roman a great opportunity to set himself apart from everybody else and to show why he really is as good as his peers say he is.
And, he has a wonderful sense of showmanship. Early on in the match, you had those dueling, "let's go Roman, let's go Edge" chants, but by the end, he had gotten the crowd firmly against him.
Right.
And not a lot of guys can do that.
Right. That's very true. Got some comments flowing in from YouTube here. Real franchise boy is back. None of this Roman Reigns nonsense. Yeah. I mean, John Cena, like it or not, John Cena is the franchise. I mean, He's carried the company since what, 2005? He won his first championship, or 2005. Yep. That's when it was. WrestleMania 21. Won his first championship there, and he's been the face of the company ever since. No doubt about it. I mean, has he basically passed the baton to Roman Reigns? Sure, but it's like Shawn Michaels was the greatest of all time through 1998, and he passed the baton to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Well, in 2002, guess what? He came back and he reclaimed his throne. So, I mean, I'm not comparing John Cena to Shawn Michaels, but in a sense I am. John Cena is back to reclaim his throne and to challenge Roman Reigns, which looks to be the Universal title match for SummerSlam.
Sure. And I think on an even deeper level, Reigns has always had the specter of John Cena looming over him.
Sure, he has.
Can he be that next guy?
Well, if you remember the feud that they had back in 2017 or 18, when Cena was cutting his promos and he said, "I'm only still here because you can't do your job." Right. And he was speaking truth.
He was.
So, yeah, Roman Reigns has always had the shadow of John Cena. Cena's been gone. Reigns has done well. Now Cena's back to, I'm sure it seems to rightfully hand over the torch once again to Roman Reigns, making him the guy. So, it's not an end of an era, obviously, but it's awesome to see John Cena back. I can't even really put it into words, especially like you said, the pop that he got. We were sitting there on the couch. We're like, okay, is Cena coming? Is Cena coming? And here he is.
Oh, I mean, I'm the father of a 13-year-old wrestling fan. The kid's going to lose his mind tomorrow morning.
Sure.
When I tell him Cena came back.
Yeah, absolutely. He is. We are watching your comments coming through on Facebook and on YouTube, all those things. So make sure you keep those coming. Peyton Eisen just commented on Facebook and he said, the biggest question is, when are we getting Becky Lynch back? We're going to get to that in just a minute. So yes, Becky Lynch is coming back. We're going to get to our thoughts on that in just a minute. But man, again, just a fantastic main event to wrap up a really good show. Really put a nice cherry on top of a really good show. Any more thoughts about the main event before we move on?
The one other thing that really stood out to me was the timing of it. When we went into the match, we thought this is going to be a short one.
Sure.
We thought this is going to be 15 minutes. God, I hope it's not a squash.
Right.
And those guys pulled out a solid half hour of wrestling.
Yeah, they did.
It's just kudos to both of those guys.
Kudos to those guys for sure. What a great match it really was. Let's move backwards in the card. The match before that, the men's Money in the Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, Big E has finally been crowned the Money in the Bank briefcase holder. He wins what was a really good match, some incredible vicious spots throughout that match. But you look at last year, Money in the Bank. You had Otis win, which nobody really saw coming. And regardless of your thoughts on Otis, because I think you and I kind of share the same feeling, is it was a mistake, but you had to ride the wave of momentum, you know, with Otis. But in a pandemic setting, it didn't really work out the way that maybe WWE would have liked it to. So now you flip that to 2021. We're back in front of fans. You can take another chance, but now you're taking a chance on a proven guy. You're taking a chance on a guy who you split from his group that he's been in for 7+ years. Now he's on his own. Now he's on track to become world champion on whatever brand it may be. I mean, all the hard work for Big E paying off, and man, that pop when he won that briefcase, man, that was great.
I can't think of a guy who just deserves to have it more.
Right.
At this point, and boy, is it time that they pulled the trigger on him.
Yep.
You know, I would have loved to see him do this a couple years back.
Sure.
Kind of glad they didn't because of the pandemic and everything.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you know, 80-something%, I think 83%.
83%. Yep.
Of the people who have gotten the Money in the Bank end up with the title.
Yeah.
So what's going to be really interesting to see is if he falls into that 17%, because things do not go well.
Right.
For that 17% of the guys.
Yeah, that's true. You look at guys like Baron Corbin, I think Damian Sandow. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Braun
Strowman.
Otis.
That's really about it
that
I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there are others. If you guys are out there listening and you know some others, throw them out to us. But that being said, we discussed earlier how cool it would have been if the men's Money in the Bank would have led off the show and Big E would have won. This is also before we knew Big E was going to win. Big E would have won and then come out and confronted Bobby Lashley after he basically squashed Kofi Kingston.
Absolutely. And I think it's good, though, because Bobby does need somebody to go against.
Yep.
You know, going into the run up to SummerSlam and maybe even beyond that.
Right.
See how this goes. And I think having Big E come out maybe tomorrow night to avenge Kofi.
Right.
We'll get the same thing. You know, get the nice little bump.
Right.
Raw.
And so let's move back to that match. We got Bobby Lashley squashing Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship. Yeah, it would definitely be cool to see Big E kind of prolong that New Day story, go to bat for his friend, you know, that kind of thing, even though he's on a separate brand. But were you okay with them booking a squash match? Because that's what it was. There was no offense from Kofi. That was a squash.
No, I absolutely hated that match. You know, I'm a big Kofi Kingston fan. You know, given my age, I have to be.
Right.
They haven't known what to do with Kofi since Kofi Mania. They really haven't. And when I watch matches like tonight, I fear that, you know, he's kind of running up towards the end of them doing anything useful with him.
Sure. Yep. I agree with that. It just, when he won the title, it was all celebratory, whatever. Well, you put him in the logical feud with Randy Orton because that's who every young champion has to feud with.
Sure.
We saw that with Drew McIntyre last year. Kofi Kingston, same thing. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have any problem with Randy Orton whatsoever. But then you get Kofi running through SummerSlam and then the premiere of SmackDown on Fox. Brock Lesnar squashes him in 8 seconds. Kofi finally, in his first, he didn't get a rematch.
Right.
In his first championship match since that, he gets squashed in about 10 minutes by Bobby Lashley. I get booking Bobby as a strong guy. Andy and I talked about it on the preview episode. Booking Bobby Lashley is this guy that you do not want to mess with. That's fine. That's great. You want to make him look strong, especially if we get Goldberg versus Lashley at SummerSlam. So you want to make him look strong, but do you do that at the expense of making Kofi look that weak?
I mean, he got treated like he's a guy from Main Event.
He did.
And making somebody look strong doesn't have to be a zero-sum game.
Right.
There have been tons of great, you know, even Lesnar has had great matches where he beats the crap out of the other guy, but the other guy looks good. I'm specifically thinking, go back to Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan.
Yep.
You know, he threw Bryan around like a rag doll, but Bryan still came out of that match looking like a star.
Lesnar versus AJ Styles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Lashley should be able to do that if he's going to be a guy with the big belt.
Right. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Sorry, my dad is joining us. He commented. I missed his comment. Sorry, Dad. Great to see John Cena back, and his purpose is to pass the torch to Roman Reigns. My broadcast partner, Tyler Peters, is joining us. Thank you, Tyler. Love bringing John Cena back. It looks like everybody is on the Cena train. Man, 3 years ago, nobody would be doing this.
No,
you know what I mean?
Be doing this,
right? I wouldn't either. You know, I mean, 3 years ago, I was at WrestleMania 34 watching John Cena get squashed by The Undertaker, and I respected what John Cena brought, but at the same time, I wanted to see him get killed.
Sure.
So, but yeah, even if Cena is just back for this SummerSlam match, then you know it is what it is. I mean, it'll be a good match. It'll be really good. Even if it's just the one, then that's great.
Sure.
Raw Women's Championship was, any more thoughts on Lashley, Kofi, Big E, that deal? I mean, it's not confirmed, obviously, that Big E's going to go to Raw. That just makes the most sense, right?
Sure. You know, as bad as the Lashley Kofi matches, I do want to take just 1 second. How about that springboard from Ricochet in the men's Money in the Bank?
Oh my gosh, where he got pushed off the ladder, landed perfectly on the top rope, and then this huge flip on top of everybody else. Just some crazy spots. And then Kevin Owens getting powerbombed through the ladder. I mean, good grief.
I mean, those are 6 guys who are absolutely at the top of their game, and just seeing them do. There was no dead weight in this match.
Right.
And there's usually dead weight in a 6-man match.
Right. And there wasn't.
And seeing it perfect for once was it was great.
Yeah, it was really good. It really was. I thought they did a really, really good job. The women's match, not so much. We'll talk about that in a minute, though. If you are just now joining us, welcome to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast live recap. That's the word I'm looking for. Guys, I am tired and it's been a long day. Live recap, Money in the Bank. Thanks so much for joining us. I am Chris Belcher. This is my pal Adam Williamson, and we are talking all things Money in the Bank. Give me just 1 second. All right. Sorry, y'all. Trying to do a bunch of things at once is not working out for me. Okay. So, live Money in the Bank recap. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're commenting and interacting with us. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you interact with us as well. If you are listening on Sportinarium Radio, thank you so much for doing that. Make sure you check us out whenever we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a run in to this show. My brother from another mother, the whole podcasting show is with us, Mr. Jared Justice. Man, what's up?
How's it going, fellas?
Well, Jared, you were on the road. You were on call today at work. That's why you didn't join us at the top. You were on the road, but you are here now. Appreciate you hanging out with us, man. How's it going? What did you think? Quick thoughts overall on Money in the Bank.
So I missed a lot of it.
Of course you did.
I read the results. I kind of saw the winners. I did catch Roman and Edge. Whew, I like that one. And then I told you, I said, well, it looks like the show's over. And you're like, nope, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
I flipped it back on, and there's John Cena. I was like, whoo, this just business just picked up, ladies and gentlemen.
That's right. I mean, if you haven't learned anything from NXT, man, you don't turn it off until that lower third shows up and everything goes off the air, man. So yeah, main event was great. John Cena showing up great, man. Jared, quick thoughts before we move on with Lashley squashing Kofi Kingston, and then on the flip side, Big E actually winning the Money in the Bank briefcase.
I did see Bobby and Kofi, and I mean, is there really much at this point to destroy when it comes to Kofi? I mean, he's been demolished by Brock. He's been demolished by this person, that person. I thought it was fantastic. I loved it, and I also caught that Bobby, whenever he would hit a big move, like whenever he threw Kofi into the ring post, one of many times, he kind of goes to the audience and throws his hand up, almost like at some point, is Bobby going to kind of turn, into some sort of a tweener? I mean, I think that would be a perfect character for him.
I think Bobby could be a tweener. He could pull that off. I think MVP makes it a little bit difficult for him to pull that off, but I don't know. I think you got to have him as a heel, especially if you got Goldberg waiting in the wings for him. I think you at least have to have him for a heel for a little bit. And then Adam and I were talking about the possibility of Big E, going to bat for Kofi and then cashing in, or at least teasing a cash in with Bobby Lashley. So I think, with that being said, the crowd would certainly be on Big E's side as opposed to Lashley's.
How was the response for Drew? I didn't get to hear that. How was that?
Well, Adam, nobody really got to hear the response for Drew because that was seriously, Jared, you missed it. I'm sure everybody's going to start commenting on this now. The feed for Peacock was glitching through all 8 entrances of the men's Money in the Bank match, and then through about the first three or so minutes of the match. So from what we heard though for Drew, at least, so we did a promo earlier in the show. Mm-hmm. With the promo earlier in the show, it was really like half and half, to be honest, wasn't it?
Yeah. It might be the thing where people were booing the fact they went backstage at the live show. That happens.
Okay. Yeah.
But, I heard from some international viewers that Drew got a pretty good pop on the network.
Okay.
So
international viewers got the actual network. So it was a Peacock issue, not a WWE network or WWE issue. So he did get a good pop.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there you go, Jared. He got a good pop. Everybody else really, I mean, the men's match really was stocked with really great guys with some really good spots. Mm-hmm. Unlike the women's match, which again, we'll get to in just a little bit. I don't want to totally rain on their parade, but it wasn't that great. Let's talk about Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley for a second. Jared, I know you didn't get to watch a lot of this, but I know you'll be able to chime in with us. Charlotte and Rhea, man, those chicks went 30 minutes, and just like Roman and Edge, they tore it up.
They did. I mean, there wasn't a dead moment in that match.
Really wasn't. It was really good stuff. One of the best matches I've seen Charlotte wrestle in a long time. And Jared, I'm not a huge Charlotte fan, but I got to give the devil its due. That was an incredible match. And I loved the way she snapped at the end of the match and put Rhea's foot in between the post and the steps and just started banging it and then slapped that figure 4 on her. I thought it was a great way to end the match. It really made Rhea look strong though, because it was like everything Charlotte did, a natural selection from the top rope. Ooh. Everything Charlotte did, she could not put Rhea away.
Right. Charlotte walks out of that match looking like a crazy heel, which is great, which is what Charlotte's good at.
Right.
And Rhea looks like she got a bad break.
Right.
I mean, it's the perfect way to keep Rhea looking good.
Yeah.
It's the perfect way to make me interested in what Charlotte's going to do next. I can never say that.
Right, because I'm definitely not interested in Charlotte either, what she's doing next. Dad, of course, being the mark that he is, commented on Facebook and just said this was the match of the night.
It was a good match.
It was really
good.
There's
a flyer involved.
Yeah,
so
thank you, Jared. There's a flyer involved. That's exactly right.
I would say, what, on most shows, this could have been the match.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It just happened to be on a show with 2 humongous ladder matches and a 30-minute main event between the best in the company and one of the best ever.
Absolutely.
And John Cena returning.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we talked about how good Roman and Edge was being overshadowed by Cena. Look how good Rhea and Charlotte was. But again, overshadowed. That just goes to show you that overall, the show was really good. It delivered.
It was one of the best pay-per-views they've done in a long time.
It really was.
It feels like they didn't leave anything in the tank. They were clearly really happy to have people back.
I was getting ready to say, and Jared, it's because there's a live crowd back. And you could tell by just watching the main event that the atmosphere was insane. And I was talking to a friend of the show, Jason Backowitz, yesterday, I believe. And he and I were both saying, like, it almost felt surreal. It almost felt like it wasn't real to actually have a crowd with great reactions at the show. And I know you felt that just watching that one match at least.
Oh yeah. As soon as I turned it on, I was like looking, I was like, wait, is that a full crowd? Oh my goodness. Wow, this
Right?
feels like this is what it's supposed to be,
That's
And
exactly
so
right.
I didn't really know how much I'd missed it until you see all the fans back.
Man, we talked about it at the beginning of the pandemic, how much wrestling fans define wrestling and how much they really influence wrestling and what happens in and out of the ring, storylines and all those kind of things. Now we're on the other side, so to speak, of this pandemic era. And now we really do see the effect that fans have on wrestling. And we're like, oh my gosh, like they really do define wrestling. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, the Thunderdome was a technological marvel.
It was great.
One of the coolest things I've ever seen. Like Drew said, I hope I never hear the word again.
Exactly right. Yeah, Drew said that in promo. I never want to hear that again. And last year at SummerSlam, when they debuted it, it's like, oh my gosh. Like now this feels like WWE again. Mm-hmm. And then now a year later, we're like, please don't ever give me that again. Because now we have fans back. So Jared, what are your thoughts on, I know you didn't watch the Charlotte and Rhea match. I highly recommend that you do that. What are your thoughts on Charlotte taking the title? And now we finally see Charlotte and Rhea essentially going their separate ways. Peyton Ison commented on Facebook earlier and said, when are we going to see Becky Lynch back? This clearly opens the door for a Becky Lynch-Charlotte match, which we've seen a zillion times, but I think this time it might have a different feel to it. I was looking forward to Becky and Rhea, honestly, at SummerSlam. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think 100% this is going to be awesome for whenever Becky comes back. Ever how they work her into it. If she comes out and, she gets up in Charlotte's face, then you have Rhea's music hit, and she comes out and she's like, who are you? Where have you been? I just lost. I need my rematch.
Right.
And so then I think that you could probably have something with her and Becky, and Charlotte trying to interfere to keep away from Becky and do this whole storyline of, Becky's way to climb back to the top to get to Charlotte.
Sure. And I would assume you're going to have Becky and Rhea winner faces Charlotte at SummerSlam, something like that. Yeah. Maybe work it into a triple threat match so that Becky doesn't have to work a whole lot in her first match back, something like that. I definitely I don't see Rhea totally separating herself from the situation, but it definitely opens the door for Becky. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it definitely takes the Rhea factor out of it a little bit. And that's a good thing. Rhea's kind of been defined by feuding with Charlotte.
Sure.
Ever since that first WrestleMania match they had together. And giving her some time away from it, I think gives her a chance to come back later.
Yeah.
And face Becky without having to deal with the Charlotte.
Sure. Yep. I totally agree with that for sure. All right. Dad says 3-way at SummerSlam. Yep. That's where we're at as well. Yeah. Let's skip to what Dad said. Keeping with the comments here on Facebook. By the way, if you're just now joining us, this is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, live Money in the Bank recap. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Facebook that you give us a comment. Follow along. That is the best way that this show goes, is you give us some comments and we interact with you. We appreciate it. Adam Williamson is here with me. My brother from another mother, Jared Justice, is on the horn here. My name is Chris Belcher. We come to you every Monday and every Thursday, wherever you find your podcast, and on YouTube. And of course, our new home, Sportinarium Radio. Make sure you check out those guys. They are at Sportinarium WW on Twitter. Sportinariumradio.com is where you can check out all their great shows. Shout out to Tom and Dave and that crew for having us on their network. Women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Jared, I know you didn't get to watch this, but Nikki Cross, now known as Nikki Ash, is the Women's Money in the Bank briefcase holder. What in tarnation is that? I mean, you've got Alexa Bliss in the match. You've got Zelina Vega. Those two were clearly the crowd favorites. It seemed like Liv Morgan had all the momentum going into the match. But Jared, Nikki Cross? Really?
I think this is another one of those situations where that she is a placeholder and somehow she will lose that briefcase before she ever gets to cash it in.
Yep. We said the exact same thing because they kept peppering us with the stat of no woman has ever cashed in and not won the championship. Well, guess what? Here comes the first one.
It's a shame. I love Nikki Cross. I'm not a fan of Nikki Ash.
See, I don't mind it. And I told you this, and Jared, you can attest to this as well. You can comment as well. Dad says my one word is stupid. For the gimmick, Dad, I mean, that doesn't surprise me, but okay. Jared, you can attest to this as well. Nikki Cross was fantastic in Sanity when Sanity was a thing. Yes. So she had this crazy chick gimmick, and now she's doing this superhero gimmick. Well, somewhere in between, she was doing some sort of mix of both of them, where she was kind of crazy, but she was kind of happy, and she tried to be with Alexa Bliss, and she was still just, to me, Jared, I know it's as convoluted as it sounds. It's what it was. The in-between just didn't work. So to me, that's why the superhero works, is because it's at least we're landing somewhere concrete that's not just in between two gimmicks.
Yeah, I think you have Vince McMahon saying, gosh dang, pal, let's shoot her to the moon. And then afterwards it's like, gosh dang, pal, what do we do now? We're going to have to give this to somebody else. Come on now. What was I thinking? Who told me this,
right.
Bruce, that's a terrible idea.
Jared, it's exactly like Otis. It's exactly like Otis last year. Let's ride this wave of momentum. Oh, my goodness, he's got momentum. Let's give him the Money in the Bank briefcase. Oh, crap. What do we do now?
Yeah.
I think it's the exact same thing, and we talked about that too. Jared, what you missed was Alexa Bliss was clearly the crowd favorite to win this match. Every time she got any momentum or got anywhere close to the briefcase, the people were going nuts. Zelina Vega got a great pop when she came out. Liv Morgan, she was kind of getting some crowd reaction when she was climbing. I thought it was really 50-50 when she was coming out. Match really was what it was, man, though. We talked about it. It was just kind of, I don't want to say slow. I'm not going to say what Dad said was stupid, but Jared, what do you got?
Any memorable spots, like, before I go back and watch this? Is there anything that, like,
anything memorable,
anything cool?
Adam, from the match really stand out? The finish of the match was interesting. You had 6 of the ladies fighting on 3 ladders up at the top, and then Nikki basically climbed a ladder and climbed over top of them and got the briefcase. So that was kind of cool. Anything else really stand out?
Yeah, Alexa teasing the magic spot.
Oh my gosh, that was kind of cool. Alexa at the beginning of the match, the ring had cleared. She was by herself, and it looked like she was going to look up and use her voodoo, whatever, to bring the briefcase down to her without climbing a ladder, which would have been awesome if she would have done it.
Well, and the Zelina mind control spot.
Oh yeah, her and Zelina climbed the ladder together, and then she, kind of controlled her like she's done to people for a couple of weeks. That was really cool. Jared, what are your thoughts on a possible, I know they're on separate brands, but Alexa and Zelina Vega alliance?
Well, before, just by what you all are saying, where my mind goes is, will Alexa mind control Ash
Nikki
into giving her the briefcase?
I had that fleeting thought at the end of the match, but I didn't say it just because I was like, I don't know. Maybe
there's something with that, I think.
I think there is too. I think there's definitely something with that. But I guess Alexa's technically a heel, so that would be a heelish move. I mean,
it feels a little convoluted, but as silly as they're kind of being with both of the characters, it kind of fits.
Yeah, that's true. They've been very hodgepodge back and forth with both those characters. So, Jared, that's a good point. You didn't even watch the match, and you think it's a good point. So there you go. Look at you. Maybe you just shouldn't watch wrestling at all and just shoot the breeze about it.
That's usually what I do.
That's usually what you do. That's true.
I also just want to say, Asuka was in that match, right?
Asuka was in that match. She was conspicuous by her absence. Asuka was very absent in that match. And she did win the match last year. So I don't know. Jared, I do not recommend going back and watching that match. You're not missing anything by missing the women's Money in the Bank. The other match on the card that we did not talk about yet, that we skipped over, was the Raw Tag Team Championship. My boy AJ Styles and Omos retaining the titles over the Viking Raiders in what was actually a really good match. I enjoyed it. The note that I wrote down here was that being in the ring with Omos, a guy that could throw the Viking Raiders around, because Jared, he did. He threw those boys around.
Really?
And being in the ring with that perspective or dynamic of a guy versus a small guy like AJ, who the Viking Raiders could do stuff with and throw around themselves, really showed off the athleticism of those guys. They really need to get some more spotlight, I think, because this match really shone a good light on them.
You know, whether it's due to injury or just the pandemic in general, the Viking Raiders have had kind of a stop-start thing going on.
Sure, they have.
WWE.
Yep.
And tonight was one of the first times they really felt special.
Yep.
Again.
You're right.
And I give a lot of credit to Styles.
Yep.
He is kind of one of the modern HBKs. He can make anybody look fantastic in a match.
That's true. AJ Styles, HBK. Where have we heard that comparison before, Jared? Just saying. Highlights of the match. Obviously, a crazy spot from AJ Styles that I have never seen before and will probably never see again was the ring was cleared. I don't remember which Viking Raider it was on the outside of the ring, and AJ hits the ropes, and as he goes to the other rope, almost picks him up, slings him over the top rope. AJ catches the Viking Raiders in a Hurricane Rana on the outside of the ring.
Wow.
It was insane. I mean, as an AJ fan, I've never seen that before, and I popped big time. That was crazy.
I mean, I don't even know that AJ Styles could have done that 10 years ago.
That's true.
This is a guy who's still innovating well into his mid-40s.
Yep.
It's, dare I say, maybe the best stuff is still yet to come from AJ Styles.
I mean, 15 years ago, he might could have done it, but definitely not 10, certainly not 5. And my goodness, couldn't have done it without 7-3 almost. Jared, it was an incredible
spectacle.
It really was. It's one of those things where we've talked on this podcast before, like, okay, who's going to stop AJ and Omos? And I thought the Viking Raiders were the team to do it. And I guess not. You know, maybe AJ and Omos carry those titles for a little while. I don't know.
Okay, well, I think I'll definitely have to go back and watch that.
You definitely need to check that one out.
Yeah.
Other one you need to go back and check out, Jared, is the pre-show match. Generally, we don't talk about pre-show matches on here because generally we don't watch them. But Rey and Dominic Mysterio dropping the SmackDown Tag Team titles to the Usos in an absolute barn burner. Oh my gosh. Just some really good false finishes in that match. And you put those four guys in the ring together and they're going to put on just a great match. I highly recommend that you go back and watch that one too.
I am shocked that with Jimmy's yet another DUI or whatever it was. I know he got drunk and did something. I don't know if it was drive or what. But I mean, this guy probably needs some help. And
he does.
It seems like they keep rewarding him and ignoring the problem.
Well,
whereas if he wasn't part of this big storyline with Roman, it might be a completely different story.
It might be a different story if he wasn't involved. You're exactly right. However, what you did miss was there was a backstage segment after the first match, I think. It was Roman, Usos, and Paul Heyman. They were in a locker room, and Roman's and the Usos are like, hey, you're the tribal chief. We got the tag team titles, all in the family, blah, blah, whatever. And Roman says something to the effect of, Jey Uso, you've been with me since day one, the beginning, main event Jey Uso. And then he looks at Jimmy, or no, he says, Jey Uso, something like, I pulled you from obscurity or something to that effect. And then he looks at Jimmy and he goes, and you And the camera zooms in on Jimmy and he gives kind of a face like this. And then Roman continues his promo, but they were insinuating the fact that he's got a problem. And the only reason he's there is because Roman's allowing him to be there, is what they were insinuating, which was hilarious.
Yeah, it was. And again, somebody tell him that Uber is a thing.
Right. What we were talking about, Jared, throughout the women's match is something about, I don't remember how we got on the conversation of what Naomi's job should be, but that Naomi's job should be to hire her husband an Uber driver, or to be her husband's Uber driver to begin with.
Well,
because he needs one.
Wasn't it the last time she was driving?
From most of that women's match? I
think the last time she was driving, not this past one, but I think the time before that, I think she was, and he was being disorderly.
Yeah, he got out and took his shirt off and was trying to square up with the cop.
Right.
So
idiot.
Lock him in the back and then Uber him around, I guess.
What did you say, Adam? Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying she was also conspicuously absent from most of that.
She was. She did a couple of good spots. But yes, she has definitely been one that they haven't utilized very, very well. All right, guys, that really that takes us through the entire card. Obviously, we don't want to go spot for spot and move for move. We want everybody like Jared to go back and watch the show for yourself, get your own feelings and your own thoughts, and then shoot us some comments. We're at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure you interact with us there. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube for a chance to win a free t-shirt. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, there's a little ticker down at the bottom that shows you how to enter that contest. So make sure you do that. Adam, thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming over and watching the show. Appreciate you hopping on the podcast. Jared, my brother from another mother, making the late run in to change the game. Can always count on you to make a run in on the show, right?
That's right. I do have one question mainly for you, Chris, and you probably already addressed this.
I may have.
I know what a huge Edge fan that you are, and of course, Roman's kind of my boy now, so.
Yep.
But what were your feelings on how Edge got defeated, and do you think that he is out of the title picture for the time being, or do you think they work him back in some with this whole feud with Cena coming up? Or where does Edge even go from here? Let's just lump all that together.
Well, Rollins jumped in and attacked him during the match,
right?
Essentially setting up their match. And then, so Rollins came in the first time. He came out the second time and actually costed Edge the match. And then after the match was over, he jumped back in and attacked him. And then he and Edge fought to the back, which cleared the ring for Cena. So I don't think Edge is in the title picture. I don't think there's any trip. I had a thought, and we talked about it last week on the show. And Jared, you and I have talked offline about this, that if the Cena thing wasn't going to happen, that it would be Rollins, Edge, and Roman triple threat for the title at SummerSlam. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. That doesn't mean, though, that Edge is totally wiped out of it. But I do think that, I don't know how their SummerSlam match ends up. Obviously, I think Roman's going to beat Cena at SummerSlam. I feel like Rollins is going to try to measle his way into getting a match with Roman. But I think Edge may cut him off at the pass, and maybe that feud goes a little bit longer. What do you think?
I think there's a good chance that they're going to eventually work to get us Seth versus Roman, but it's not happening at SummerSlam.
No, not happening at SummerSlam. Might happen in the fall. I don't know. Of course, we had the return of Finn Balor on SmackDown last Friday night, which we're going to talk about on this week's episode on Thursday. So make sure you check us out. But Finn Balor comes back, and I think he is a great opponent for Roman Reigns to feud with after John Cena. I think Balor and Roman could have a string of really good matches, Jared. And I know you feel the same way, because the way that Balor went to NXT kind of transformed himself. Now he's back, and I think he and Roman would put on a great program.
Yep, I agree. 100%.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up. Dad, Peyton Ison, all of you folks Tyler Peters, all of you folks who interacted with us live, we appreciate it very much. Jared, thanks for making the run in. Adam, thanks for hopping on the show. This coming Thursday, check us out on Sportinarium Radio. Check us out wherever you find your audio podcast and on YouTube. Myself, my brother from another mother, Jared Justice, and a special guest. Should I go ahead and reveal it?
Why not?
Next week on Thursday, Mr. Bo Tavian makes his return to the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast. Yes, you heard me right. This coming Thursday, and Jared is out. Ladies and gentlemen, Bo Tavian will be back next week. Make sure you come check us out, hang out with us, interact with us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave us a review. We greatly appreciate it. I am your phenomenal host, Chris Belcher. This has been the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast live recap show. We will catch you guys down the road.